Gear up as Cash Miller and a team of accomplished guests steer you on an enlightening voyage filled with valuable tips, fresh insights, and effective strategies. Welcome to Marketing Masters, the Agency Power Show.
Hello, everyone. This is Cash Miller. I'm the host of Marketing Masters. I'm the CEO of Titan Digital. Today, we're going to be talking AI, and which is a huge topic. People are like, it's in the news constantly. We've had, talked about it from different points of view on this podcast multiple times, but this time we're going to be talking about it as it relates to content and how you can actually be using it to your advantage. If you have to put out a lot of content for whether it's your website, social media, and such. I've got with me Luke Hixson. He's with Arbor Digital. He's a content specialist, and he writes content for his clients and whatnot, copyright. And Luke, it's great to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Like you said, I'm Luke. I'm the founder of Arbor Digital. It's more of a startup marketing agency, except I don't really like to call it a marketing agency. I more call it a consulting and executing agency, just because clients come to us with any range of problems. We sort of consult with them, get to know their problems in a more in-depth sort of thing, see what they've tried, see what's worked, see what hasn't. From there, we make sort of consulting recommendations, say, I think you should use paid ads, or I think you should do this marketing campaign. You should do this, you should do that. If they accept the recommendation, then we say, all right, we'll be your strategic partners and we're in it from the long run, and we see it all the way through and keep going from there.
Okay, so it's great having you. I want to dive right into this, because let's say ChatGPT and of course other AIs that have been coming out, they are, people have been kind of worried, are they replacing, or is it better than, and really, my point of view is that it is a great assistant and such. There's so many things that it can do, but it's not great at replacing things entirely. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, because you're a copywriter, okay? Does it have the ability to replace copywriters?
You're going to be hearing this a lot, and a lot of my answers probably, but I'm going to preface everything by saying, in its current state, no. Obviously, I cannot speak for the future. It is a language model. It is an AI. It's machine learning. It's literally designed to become exponentially better over time. But in its current state, I would say no. It is a tool in the tool belt. I've talked to a lot of copywriters in this space, and they've all been sort of worried that, I'm going to get replaced. I'm in a dying profession. But I always respond with, all right, you're worried. I understand. Go ask ChatGPT to write an outreach email or sort of anything having to do with copy and read it out loud. And that usually makes all the worries go away. Yeah, looking back to the question, there's absolutely a worry that it can replace copywriters. But again, in its current state, it's not quite there. It's designed to get better over time. But I can't really imagine there wouldn't be a point where it doesn't replace, at the very least, the low-level copywriters. As it keeps getting better and better and better, it's going to start chopping off those lower people. There's always going to be, at least in my opinion, there's going to be certain human touches and nuances to selling and copy that who knows if a computer will be able to emulate, or at least pretend to emulate. But I think that any copywriter or agency that's smart enough to see AI as a tool, to see chat as a tool, and start learning the ropes now will be more than okay.
So let's talk about, since you're saying it's not totally ready to do that now, and maybe one day it will be. There's a likelihood, I think that it could be, but that's not today. So why, though? What are its shortcomings, essentially, and why can't it replace copywriters today? Because it can't do it. You mentioned a couple of points already.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason is because if you tell it to write anything having to do with sales or copy, if you say, write me an outreach message, no matter how specific your prompt is, no matter how many details you give it, no matter how much you prod it to say, okay, this is what I want you to say. This is the structure I want. No matter what you do, it's going to say, hello, prospect name.
Yeah.
I hope this email finds you well. Like it's some 17th century woman writing a love letter. Who knows? So again, I think it's too early to say, but in its current form, it doesn't have the capabilities of adding in those sort of human nuances, that emotion, the psychological aspects. Okay, I'll weave some curiosity in here. I'll do this. I'll grab attention here. I'll lead it to here. There's too many small details and human touches that it's just not able to fully communicate quite yet. Again, I can't speak for the future. Who knows? After 2 years of reading and analyzing all of these professional copywriters and all their stuff, who knows what it'll be able to do. But right now, not quite there, but I'm confident.
Yeah, eventually it can get there as it basically ingests more data and sees how we want it to be used and such. Yeah,
exactly.
And so, okay, so it has a problem with like human inflection. It has a problem with, I think, variance, in the way it says things, because, you could ask it to spit out 3 different things for the same, basically prompt, right? Yeah,
exactly.
And it'll give you something similar each time, right? And and one of the things that I found is you can get it to vary, quite a bit, actually. Yeah. But the issue is you pretty much have to write it, you have to be so specific, and give it so much of an instruction that you almost could have just wrote what you're asking it to, because of how much time you spent trying to give it the instruction. Because you also have to put in that extra thought of, how do I explain to it what I want? So, that's one of the issues, is how much instruction at the moment it takes, to be able to do something with it. So let's talk about, though, if you're going to use it as an assistant, because you're an advocate, though, that this can be a really good tool to help you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about how you should be using it. How is it that tool? What is the way that people should approach it, so that they can maximize its value when they're writing stuff?
I think the biggest misconception, yikes, that people have surrounding ChatGPT, especially when it comes to copywriting, is they think it's some magical miracle thing that lets them turn off their brains and, I just tell this robot to write this $1 million sales low and then voila, I'm rich. That's not how it works. It's unfortunately not there yet. I think people need to approach it with a mindset of it's a tool in the tool belt and not a master solution. The way I've personally been using it is to enhance the speed side of things and the quality of content sort of things. Turning to the speed side, it is an AI. An AI is designed to take the slow human side of things out of the equation. You tell ChatGPT to say, okay, write me an ebook, a 500-word ebook or a 1,000-word ebook on, who knows, a workout program, something like that. And the span of 30 to 60 seconds, boom, you have an ebook about a workout program. Lord knows what the quality's like. I would bet that it's definitely not the best in the world. Depends on what your prompt is and what you're looking for. But in 30 to 60 seconds, you have a fantastic foundation that you can start using. And if you can take your own sort of background in copywriting and sales, go in, revise it, make it sound human, make it sound good. That's how you use it to increase your speed. Looking at the quality sort of things, my personal favorite use for ChatGPT has been turning it into like my sort of private copy coach reviewer sort of thing. I've put in a lot of time into sort of designing these big, long chunk prompts that say, okay, break down this copy line by line, rate each line, give me like the pros, the cons, what the reaction could be as a reader, as a prospect, any sort of things like that. Just give it a nice, huge breakdown, rate the copy from 1 to 10, that sort of thing. That in its current form is, I think, the greatest use of ChatGPT, just to make sure you're doing everything well.
Yeah, because My understanding, or at least what, I use ChatGPT, but I haven't done the comparison to like Grammarly and stuff. But my understanding is that it's actually better, at picking things up and stuff and finding the errors and whatnot. And then what you mentioned with prompts, one of the things that people don't realize, I think it takes prompts, but those prompts can be permanently put in so that you can choose them later. Yeah,
exactly.
And that is really important because, like, say, as an agency, we've pretty much, like all of our employees use it. They all have individual accounts and stuff. And we've taught them that this is an assistant for certain things, but we will write permanent prompts for things, whether it's content or design or things, that we want it to be able to do on a regular basis. And like I say, that's one of the time-saving things that you can do. You mentioned a couple of times, like, email copy and whatnot. Like we've got it so it can write a good, decent sales email, but we've written a prompt that we use permanently, and we've given out to multiple like salespeople and said, look, this is to help you be able to write these things a bit faster and whatnot. And then you make your adjustments to it. Okay, you'll get what you need. Yeah. But know that, it's not necessarily your finished product. Then you need to go ahead and be willing to edit and personalize and stuff like that. But we're going to take a little bit of that thought out of it, in the sense of you can get at least beyond the, what do I even write to begin with? The writer, essentially, writer's block, for it. Same thing. It's also really good at, generating ideas and such, if you really need to. But you've got to still be willing to prompt, because one of the things I've seen, if you try to generate kind of like questions and things like that, it has a tendency to repeat itself. If you don't give it enough of an input, it will give you, like, if you tell it to generate, ask it to generate 10 questions on, whatever subject, it's going to give you 10 questions back, no problem. But if you don't give it enough room on the subject, to work with, it will give you basically 10 different ways to ask the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways, like, as a copywriter, what kind of copy are you able to write, or have been using it to help you as that assistant to be able to, do? Like, I've used it, I'm not a copywriter, but I've used it to even write like simple contracts and stuff like that, because that kind of stuff it's actually pretty good at, as long as you're descriptive. So how are you using it? What kind of copy have you been able to write with it?
I think just because of what clients and prospects I've been working with, I've really only been able to use it with like website rewrites and email campaigns. But the super nice part about ChatGPT is you can use it for any sort of copy, any sort of writing you want, right? You don't have to be writing a certain kind of copy to say, rate this copy from a scale of 1 to 10. What can I improve? What did I do well? How can I improve this? How can I improve that? What does this sentence fit? Would this sentence be better? That's independent of the kind of copy. So because of my use cases, I've just been using it on email campaigns and websites, and it's been very, very effective and useful and sped me up crazy amounts, but you can use it for anything you want. Okay.
So let's talk, you mentioned email and stuff, and I would also extend it to like landing pages and whatnot, because, anything that's like, sort of a very short form type of copy, like that.
Exactly.
Using it, what advantages does it bring if you're using it versus, just trying to write it on your own, besides speed?
I think it also definitely speed is the biggest one, but I think outside of speed, it is the general quality. And yeah, I just say the quality. If you can use an AI machine learning language model to tell you what works, what sounds good, does this flow, does this sentence work here, would this be better, is this shorter? It can shorten things down, it can expand on things, it can add a friendly tone, it can make it a more professional tone. That I think is, apart from speed, the greatest thing you can do with it.
Now, one thing though, so I know like Facebook is integrating their own version of AI and stuff, and they're actually putting it into their ad platform. And
okay.
So we talk email and landing pages, and one of the things that you can use, chat because you can do more variations. A lot of advertising is about variations on copy to see which ones get a better response. And something like chat can be used to create those variations. So for example, you end up writing an original piece. You don't use chat or anything to do it. And it's, maybe an entire landing page, but then you can take that landing page or that email copy or whatever, you can put it into chat and then ask it to write variations and give it specific instructions on how you want it varied,
Exactly.
so that it sees your overall intent. But then, like I say, with ad copy and stuff, we're often, I'm running 2 ads against each other. I've got, each is got some intent that's different, if it's in the language and whatnot. I could be, it could be quite a bit different. But if I'm still trying to sell the exact same thing, it's like, how do I say it differently? And often, we can struggle with how do you vary it. Whereas, you give it chat and you say, I want to be able to do this, you can get those variations a lot faster. So it goes back to the speed part. That's going to help you. But it's interesting. I heard there was a person from Facebook that was talking at a conference, and they were talking about how they're integrating it, they're testing it, and they were able to come up with something like 50,000 ad variations because of AI.
Oh, wow.
Something that they would never be able to do. Even if you had a whole army of people, working to come up with those variations. And so to be able to do that kind of stuff, and really take your testing, and that goes with the email copy. If you could have a list of 1,000 people and say, I'm going to send them all a different email. Okay. I have the same intent behind each email. I want them to go, to this page or whatever, but I'm going to break it up and I'm going to send 10 different emails, each to 100 people, and I can test 10 variations. Well, that takes a lot of time to come up with all those variations, a lot of thought into it. So I think that's one of the areas where it really helps. It's not just for an individual. It's about, being able to test different variations on whether it's a landing page, whether it's email. It doesn't, even if you were using, text within a Facebook ad or programmatic or say on TikTok or something.
Absolutely.
So, there's a lot of possibility on that side. You've already talked a little bit about speed, as far as team productivity, but let's give it like some estimates. Like, okay, if you were writing a landing page right now, just to give people like a real world example in a sense, if you had to write a page for a client from scratch, that was a landing page. You're going to have advertising copy and they're going to hit this page. How long would it take a copywriter to put that together just as an average? And then how long if you have chat assisting you? Because, to do the same exact task, because the idea is, what is the savings behind it? How much time, how much faster is it for you? Because you're a copywriter, but you're one that wants to be able to use it. It is assisting you. What's the difference?
I think obviously it would depend on the client, but on average, I'd say, depending on how much research on either the prospect or both the prospect and their target market I did before reaching out and before sealing the deal sort of thing, I'd say just from a research point of view, from a research standpoint, seeing who I need to talk to, what their pains are, what their desires are, make sure I know exactly what I need to say to get a certain response from the target market. I'd say purely research, probably anywhere between like 5 to 10 hours just to make it extremely, extremely effective. Obviously, it depends. But then from there, actual writing of the landing page and making it look all nice and make sure it all flows and stuff like that, probably no more than like 2 or 3. So I give it a rough estimate of about 8 to 12 hours without chat. With chat, obviously, the research is infinitely more important. Chat is only as good as the prompt and the information you give it, at least for right now. So research would probably stay the same, if not increase a little bit more. When it comes to actually writing and making it all sound good and look good and all that, that would probably be shortened to maybe an hour at most, just because chat designs the whole thing, writes the whole thing in 30 seconds, maybe max.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just sort of editing and revising to making it sound more human. Okay, I want this to add more curiosity. I want this to be a stronger CTA. I want this and want that. So I'd say go from 12 hours to maybe 8 or 7.
So let me ask you this though, because you're writing the prompt and everything, you're doing the research on it, but chat is of course always pulling from sources. It has places that it's getting this information and stuff. So is the research side still as necessary, or is there any way, because you're writing the prompt that's based on your research, but is there any time savings that you could see potentially in there? Because it sounds like the research side of it is mostly so you can get your prompt really accurate, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the focus of the research would change depending on if I'm writing it by hand versus writing it with chat. Because obviously, like you said, chat pulls from all these sources, and I think with Chat 4, it has an internet API, so it can just search for you. So that would increase speed dramatically. But I think if I'm writing with chat, I would focus less on, okay, here's my target market, here are the things that they're interested in, and do more in-depth research into the actual language the target market uses to describe their problems. Because I don't think chat will be able to do that. I've used chat for my research. I've said, here's my target market, what are their pains, what are their desires? But you actually need to have very, very in-depth research to say, what language is the target market using? So I can speak directly to them, sort of thing. Okay. So I think the focus of the research changes.
Okay, because chat can help you do some of the research. But
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that part can speed you up, but there's going to be some more in-depth things, about that research that it can be one of the sources you're using, but it can't replace all of the sources.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes total sense because and the research is it's what you're basing everything on. So the potential for it to speed things up is actually there on the research side, but it's not going to be totally it's not all encompassing. It's
exactly
like you might be able to shave a few hours off or something like that just because there's certain things it's going to have access to that it can spit back at you, but there's some of it you're going to have to go find for yourself. And partly because of how it's potentially providing you the information, there's going to be key points that it may not have, within there. And you would know that it didn't have it necessarily because, you don't know what's missing essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah. You've got to, if you look it up for yourself, you would know, but until that happens. So the takeaway is don't be reliant upon on chat or any other AI related system, for all of your research or anything when you're putting it together.
Exactly. Again, tool in the tool belt.
Yeah. So let's talk about, in your workflows. Okay. You've got, I guess, as a copywriter, and this kind of applies to a lot of different positions. Like I say, we use it in our agency throughout. So depending on, what you do, like I use it maybe a couple of times a week, something like that. It just depends on what I'm doing. But what does it look like from your end? Because this would apply to people that, like I've got designers on staff, right? And we've, had to combine it with, another system, but it's able to help us, in that day to day. So how has your workflow changed, and how you're just accomplishing things, because it's different for you. You've sped up, so you're able to handle more work. Technically you can take on more clients and everything, but what does it look like, and how do you incorporate it into your actual workflow? And not just for something, for your kind of a position, what would you advise for even people that are using it kind of, more as an assistant, not as a writing, I'm not a copywriter, but I can still make use of it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest application I've had personally is just, again, as my personal reviewer. Before that, I would have to submit it to either my brother, who is a copywriter, some friends, some copywriter friends, just to say, hey, does this make sense? Does this flow? I'd have to read through it out loud 4, 5, 6 times just to make sure I liked exactly how it sounded. But after I sort of figured out how to prompt chat to do essentially all of that for me in a matter of seconds and just give me sort of written reports, ratings, what can I do better? What did I do well? That sort of thing. I think the first and most notable application was like my personal copy coach that I just had on hand all the time. I didn't have to wait for someone to be available so I could call them and read them some sales page that I made. I could just always have that near me, sort of thing. And I think turning to people, even when it's not in copywriting, if businesses want to start implementing chat into their workflows, into their whatever they do, their daily lives, their weekly lives, whatever, the first step by far has to just be give your employees time to just play around with it, right? Experimentation is really like the only true way to learn how to use this thing. Just give them time to see, okay, what are the limitations of what it can do, establish some expectations of what it produces. Okay, it does this very well. How does this prompt work? What do these words elicit? Just that sort of thing. Let them sort of design their own prompts on their own for what each employee needs to do. And then after a while of individual experimentation to see, okay, I was able to use chat to speed this part up. Wasn't super good at doing this. It did well at doing this. Then let all the employees come together, compare their prompts, maybe establish the permanent ones like you talked about for just general office things, maybe assistant things, maybe write Chrome extensions to do this. But the first step is it has to be experimentation.
Yeah, that's because everybody's going to use it differently.
Exactly.
So yeah, you definitely, there is a little bit of a learning curve only because it's not hard to talk to the thing. It's the learning curve is in writing the prompts.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a little bit of work and you do have to put some thought into it. That's why it's really important that if you are going to be using any kind of a prompt, the same essential prompt, multiple times, you want to be able to save it, so have it as available in the system. And then you can always edit the prompt, for whatever the specific purpose is. But there is a lot. There's also a lot of tools. Do you know, so chat there's a lot of stuff that's been put out there. Do you have any go-to resources, for prompts or anything like that? Because a lot of people have been putting them out, for, other people to basically copy and use for themselves.
Yeah. I think the most I've done has been the occasional scroll through Twitter and, okay, this guy, AI expert, okay, doubtful, but okay, these are some nice looking prompts to do a cool thing. Might as well try it out. But I think the most helpful thing for me personally has just been personal experimentation. I can take inspiration for prompts from all these Twitter AI gurus, but I've never sort of actually looked for them. I've just taken inspiration where I found it. And if I see another use case for AI in my personal life or someone tells me about it, I just sort of go home, pull out the computer and just start writing my own prompts, see what happens.
Yeah, there are some online resources and stuff. If you look it up, the easiest thing is just look up ChatGPT prompts. There are sites out there that are all over the place where people have been putting them out for different uses. It's, it's an ever evolving landscape. So there's more things as people experiment because there's so many people that have jumped on board with not just using it, but helping other people learn how to use it themselves. Yeah. And I think that's really, incredible. If you're going to get in, start using it, besides, yes, it's experimentation and stuff, I guess, what are the pros and cons that you see, for ChatGPT? Why would you use it, but also why would you stay away from it? What does it look like on both ends for you?
I think I'll start with the cons just to get the negative stuff out of the way. We like to end on a positive note, right?
Yeah.
I think the biggest danger by far is sort of what I mentioned before. which is people view ChatGPT as a miracle product and an excuse to turn their brain off and to stop working and just say, I can tell this computer to write me this thing and I'll suddenly be a millionaire. So if your employees or yourself or whoever thinks that they will be able to use ChatGPT to do all of the work for them and view it as a solution instead of a tool, that is going to chop them at the knees and they're going to shoot themselves in the foot, at least for right now, right? But that is by far the biggest danger. But the reason I am such a proponent of it is because I'd argue that this applies to life in general, but especially in the business world. Everything is hyper competitive, right? That's how capitalism works. Yeah. And if you or your business is not fast enough or willing to adapt fast enough to a changing landscape like we have right now, AI changed the landscape and it's here to stay, right? Yeah. And if you are not willing to adapt or not fast enough to adapt, you are going to get trampled by the people who decide, okay, AI is a new technology. This is fantastic, cool. I'm going to implement this. And again, if you don't do that, you're going to get trampled, right? Yeah. There's a reason why 10-year-olds today know what Netflix is and not Blockbuster. Yeah, right. It's because Blockbuster was not fast enough. They said, oh, yeah, streaming, we'll get to that eventually. You know, it's never going to make it. And Netflix left in the dust. So
that you're right about that. And there's a lot of businesses that are adopting it. Like I said, we consider ourselves kind of an early adopter. You know, as soon as it came out, we started trying to figure it out and said, hey, this is really going to make a difference. And it feels like almost that it's been around forever now. But in truth, it was the point where it really started getting announced to the world was only like 9 months ago or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yet businesses, have had to adopt it. If they don't, they're losing out. But I've talked to a number of different types of companies, not just, other agencies that, they've, have totally adopted it. I heard one of a real estate agency, like a really early adopter and stuff. And they started writing, all their social media posts and stuff with it because of the fact that, and it was doing such a good job. Now somebody's trained, obviously, that does it. Cause I think that's always the missing thing is that whether the job is something you do or not, you don't have to be a trained expert in any particular field to use chat. But what you do need to do is you have to have a bit of common sense. You have to understand how the prompts work, to be able to do it. And you can write really well, potentially. But if you are a lousy writer to begin with, it doesn't necessarily fix those problems. So, because you have to contribute, you can't don't take it at face value just because it spits something back. You've got to be willing to either, and I found this to be the case, you can write additional prompts, so it spits something back and you give it additional instructions to make changes. Well, depending on what you're trying to write, it's often faster to just make the changes yourself anyway. By the time I write the prompt, I'm telling it what I want changed. I could have just changed it. And so that's why it's a great assistant, though. It can do some of that initial legwork for you and some of the, especially if you're writing any kind of longer copy or blog posts or stuff, but you got to be willing to go in, make adjustments for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts on chat, and where it's going to go in the future or anything like that?
I think just a message of I'm excited to see what the future holds. I'm excited to see what the magical algorithms can do, but in the meantime, experiment, have fun with it. Don't treat it as a miracle product, and understand that the people who are willing to adapt and use AI as a tool are always going to beat the ones who do not. So that's my final thought. And it's not ready to take over the world yet. So don't worry about it yet. Exactly.
So Luke, how would people get a hold of you?
They can go to my website at arbordigital.co, or they can just email me directly at luke@arbordigital.co, and I will be happy to set up a consultation appointment, answer some questions, do some work for them. Happy to do it.
Yeah, Luke is an expert content writer, and that's what his agency focuses on. So I'm Cash Miller. I'm the CEO of Titan Digital.